Hello and welcome to Media Lit, where we treat each piece of media like great literature. I'm your host, Randy Elaine, and joining me as always is my co-host, my partner in crime, my favorite nerd. It's Kris Ingersoll. Kris, how you doing tonight?
So good, Randy. I think I've talked to you a little bit in the background that I've had a tough week and some
Mm-hmm.
change, but getting here to come here and pod with you is a wonderful respite from the real world. And so I am in this moment so good.
I'm just so happy we could create a pocket of time for you that is going to be comfortable and safe during a difficult time. And Kris, it's fitting that we are talking about time today because we are here for the second installment in the Media Lit New to Who series. If you are tuning into Media Lit for the first time or you missed part one of New to Who, this is a segment where Kris has been so kind as to let me introduce him to the Doctor and Doctor Who. Using my own timey-wimey shenanigans, we are jumping him this way and that way through the timeline of New Who. I'm having a great time. It's almost like I get to be the Doctor with my own companion. It's been a joy for me so far. Kris, how are you enjoying your introduction to New Who so far?
It's been such a joy, and can't tell you how safe I feel in your hands, Doctor. I'll follow you on any next adventure you have in store for us. It's been a blast so far.
Now you can't see it based on the direction of my camera, but I just kind of looked up longingly at the TARDIS sitting on the shelf on the other side of my computer. Right next to that, I've got a David Tennant as the 10th Doctor pop figure looking down on this podcast, giving us his blessing. So I can't wait to see where this goes. Now, I was just talking to folks who have never tuned into Media Lit before. Perhaps you've been here, but not for a New to Who episode. One of the things we love about our show is all the time that Kris and I take getting to know each other and getting to know our guests a little bit better. And boy, oh boy, did we put a lot of time into that back in episode 1 of our New to Who series. So if you go back to our second overall episode of Media Lit, Heaven Sent, it's also labeled as New to Who Part 1. You can see Kris ask me a bunch of questions about my own history with Doctor Who, my own fandom, what it means to me on a personal and an emotional level. And Kris also talked quite a bit about, why he finally decided to get into Doctor Who, and exactly why we went with the unconventional choice of starting with the Peter Capaldi episode, Heaven Sent, when today's episode, Blink from season 3, is the most famous episode for folks to recommend to New Who viewers. But Kris, we can't leave our audience without any sort of insight into how we're feeling. Can you give us a little check-in on your Who fandom, your budding Who fandom?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's been 2 months now or so that I have been very modestly claiming the title of Whovian, because I would say I'm a fan. I am far from ready to engage in real dialogue with real fans who have real time spent with the Doctor and his various companions, their various companions. But I am certainly a fan on just these 2 viewings. Now, I've held off on dabbling further because I trust you to guide me in my journey. I won't watch what you don't tell me to watch. And so I've been disciplined, but I've been able to enjoy the hype around the new Doctor yet to come to Disney Plus. And so it was in watching that trailer and having very real hype for what I was seeing, very real curiosity for this new iteration of the Doctor based on actual experience. I'm so excited to be along for the ride, so excited to be a part of that conversation and that community. And even just while you were introing the New to Who segment, you dropped a timey-wimey, and I thought to myself, now I really get that reference. Prior to 2 months ago, I would have known it was, I think I would have known it was Doctor Who, but now, after prepping for tonight's episode,
Mm-hmm.
I don't just know it's a Doctor Who reference. I know from what episode, from which Doctor. I feel really good about that. This episode, my gosh, if I had to compare it to something, I think it felt totally different than Heaven Sent as far as those media comps. This looked and felt to me like the best episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Anthology series, a one-off story, something that you could have read in a collection of short stories that would have totally grabbed you and made you wish you could have read more about it. And so, yeah, that was a comp I was surprised by. I didn't expect to be watching and feel some nostalgia for my Saturday night viewings as a kid.
I was also an Are You Afraid of the Dark fan. That opening sequence continues to haunt my nightmares. It had no business being that terrifying. Uh, I may be misremembering this episode, but when you said it, I instantly went to this episode where there is a family staying in like a bed and breakfast type situation, and there are mirrors all over the house. And I
Oh,
believe they discover that the mirrors are like slowly sucking years of their life away, and they are starting to
yeah.
age more quickly. That really
Like,
that freaked me out real good.
don't love that. Kind of opposite of a Dorian Gray. For me,
Hmm.
I don't know if you recall, there was like an episode that concerned comic books and a comic book villain, this like
Oh
knockoff of the
wow.
Joker, this really terrifying clown that was blue and yellow. And some device brings him into the real world, and there's blue goo coming from his mouth as he cackles. And that's still something that can give me shivers. That show, man.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So I guess we've done this before. To your point, we got pretty deep during our Heaven Sent chat. But are there any Doctor Who memories that you didn't get to share then that get resurfaced while watching Blink?
Yeah, I thought about this. I hope we've got a long series of Who episodes ahead of us. So, I'm not going to let myself get carried away. But as I like to mention, my day job is an English teacher. This very podcast, Media Lit, is full of wordplay, but it's also partly named after a class that I used to teach. And the reason I'm providing this setup is there is a moment from season 2 of New Who featuring David Tennant's Doctor, where he won me over on just like a new, deeper level that I still haven't quite recovered from. And I will not spoil the episode or give you the full context. But the Doctor finds himself with a group of folks. They're in a desperate situation, and they find themselves in a library. And the Doctor says, "You want weapons? We're in a library. Books are the best weapons in the world. This room's the greatest arsenal we could have." I fell into love with the Doctor on a deeper level that I've yet to recover from. So there's a little tidbit for today.
That's wonderful, man. I'm excited to possibly live through that moment and get to talk to you about it.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah, at some point you're going to see a library and you're going to start getting hyped up. So hope you don't mind.
This is that time. This is that time.
All right, fantastic. One other little preview of our last episode is we did kind of a lengthy segment where I quizzed Kris about several Doctor Who terms that I knew he wouldn't know, and he had a good time, and he was a great sport trying to figure out what those things might be. I just want to do a super mini version of that. I've got one new term and one term to revisit. Uh, so Kris, here is your new Who quiz for today. If I used the phrase fixed point in time, what might you guess I was talking about?
So those words in that order don't ring a bell from the episode, but I remember this episode feeling quite fixed. Uh, so I don't know for sure, but I'm getting vibes of like what's that word? Nexus event, sort of like
Ooh,
an immutable event, something, maybe most of the time is in flux, but there are certain fixed points, things that must happen that always happen. Am I dancing around it?
Kris, my friend, you're a true nerd scholar. You are pretty much exactly right. This is one of those concepts that any good genre show will use to explain something and set some rules that don't always seem to hold true later on at different points in the series. And it can go back and forth. But Yeah, a fixed point is exactly what you're talking about. A Nexus event a la Marvel is a great comp.
Yep.
The one extra little layer here is there are different points in Doctor Who lore, especially in the David Tennant run, where he suggests that he and all Time Lords can sense fixed points in time. They can almost feel or perceive the time differently around certain events.
Mm.
And when we get down to trying to piece together, you know, how the events of this episode unfold, I don't know. It could be a term that we might find a creative way to use to our advantage, even though it does not appear in the episode. So just file that away for later. All right. I also want to ask you
Cool.
about a term that we've been over, the TARDIS, time and relative dimension in space. You were happy to learn that was an acronym back in our previous episode. Now, you have not spent much time with the TARDIS, although you're familiar with the police box imagery. Back in Heaven Sent, you never really stepped inside. You got to see the set because the Doctor had sort of an abstract mind palacey thing going on, and they were using the TARDIS set from that point, in the Capaldi run. So you've seen the TARDIS set, but you got to see another one today. You didn't quite get to see the Doctor running the show live within the TARDIS. But I'm just curious, based on the little time you spent with this craft, do you have any thoughts, feelings, opinions, theories about it?
I don't understand it completely yet. I was really surprised when the TARDIS disappeared without its
Mm.
passengers. I'd be curious to learn more about what sort of binds you to the TARDIS so that you journey with it. And I made an observation this time around. I didn't realize that the TARDIS changes. You told me that it can change its external appearance, or once upon a time it could, and it got stuck in this police box mode. But it was so different inside to Capaldi's.
Mm.
It has a totally different vibe inside. It could have been from two different properties, could have been totally two different time machines, as far as my experience is concerned. Is that common? Does it always change with the Doctor?
Yeah, I as you know, we are here for New Who in particular. Perhaps one day we'll voyage into the classics together as equals, Kris. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, in this era of New Who, a big part of the process has become the TARDIS also having to regenerate and reconstruct itself for various reasons. Uh, Most of the time, this is a handy excuse to help turn over production to a new showrunner, as well.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, we've seen lots of interiors, lots of vibes. The
Okay.
most recent run did one of the most drastic overhauls of the TARDIS in a while. Uh, you probably caught some interior shots. You said you caught the Shuti Gatwa preview trailer. So yeah, lots of
Mhm.
looks for the TARDIS. Someday we'll have a great conversation about our favorite looks, but I don't think you're quite ready for that yet.
Yeah, the new one's intriguing. Highly sort of modern, minimalist,
Hmm.
very, very intriguing to see. Tennant's felt more organic than Capaldi's inside. Like you were inside of a living thing, I guess was my most immediate feeling. And then something else I observed, I was interested to hear the detective call out the ways in which you can tell visually that it's a dummy box, that it's not actually a real police call box, that the windows aren't the
Uh,
right size. That was just squirreled it away. I don't know if that's important, what that means, why, but I thought to myself, why wouldn't it be a perfect replica of like an exact call box as it would be in the world so that it's, completely unrecognizable from the real thing? Um, so yeah, not a theory yet, but something I've sort of noted away so that in the future it might develop into one.
so Kris, I've got to thank you right now because you just created for me the perfect excuse to debut something I was going to save for the very end of the pod, but I think I'm going to bring it up right now. That little speech from Billy Shipton. As someone
Mm.
who knows New Who quite well, but I've not lived with it my entire life, I know we've got generations worth of doctors and diehard fans out there. Uh, if any of you were kind enough to grace the two of us with your time, a couple of newbies, and you have a better answer to this question, or quite frankly, anything I'm saying here about Doctor Who, you can officially reach out to us at our email address, which is media.lit@gmail.com. You're going to write out the word slash in the middle there. And yeah, I cannot wait to hear your feedback, your ideas, your opinions, and all the knowledge you can drop on us so that I can hopefully be an even better guide, an even better doctor for Kris. But my read on those windows being off at the moment, that strikes me as just like some inside British baseball sort of talk. We know what these boxes were meant to look like. To the rest of the world, it's probably a passable facsimile, but yeah, we've had years of fans pointing out that there are potential flaws and issues with the way we've presented the TARDIS. Uh, I imagine there have also probably been some design adjustments from the earliest days of Doctor Who, so it might be more contained to just the design within the show. But that just feels very much like acknowledging a fan conversation. That's my theory.
Okay, it's a wink and a nod to the fans, to the viewers who've called them out over the years. They're getting ahead of it.
Yeah, that's my best answer for now. But hey, fingers crossed that we hear from a true Whovian and get a more complete answer.
Cool. An exciting day to debut our email address. Thanks, bud.
Fantastic. Fantastic. All right. As I mentioned earlier, our homework assignment for today is season 3, episode 10, Blink. This is an episode that is often cited as a great episode to recommend to new viewers because it's one of the most self-contained episodes of New Who that ever existed. It stars a character named Sally Sparrow, who we have yet to see return to the Whoniverse, but she comes in here, does a bang-up job. So we are ready to dig into this episode. We both really loved it, but this is Media Lit. So we've got to ask one flavor question before we dive in too far.
Gotta.
So Kris, not only do we get Carey Mulligan as Sally Sparrow, but we also get the introduction of what are now some of the most elite Doctor Who villains and the Weeping Angels. These Weeping Angels feast off of the potential energy of other beings. And the way this is depicted on screen is that their touch can send you careening back through time into a place that you don't belong. The angels are feeding on that future you might have had. Now, not a fate I would like to face, but Kris, if you did find yourself robbed of your potential energy by a weeping angel cast back in time, where would you like to end up?
This felt like a nearly impossible question for me to answer. Because I'm a straight white male, there aren't a ton of times in history that are particularly dangerous to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also acknowledge that therefore I also probably lack a certain perspective on how challenging certain periods of history were to live through. And so I don't want to just like jump to what sounds like the most exciting and interesting part of history, because it probably sucked for like 99% of the people who lived on the planet at that time. But with my like very narrow perspective, I think I mentioned to you before, I really enjoyed the book Johnny Tremaine as a kid. It's sort of historical fiction set at the time of the Revolutionary War. Is this familiar to you?
Oh, I know Johnny Tremaine. Let's get down to some silversmithing,
Yeah.
Kris.
Somewhere in there. Like some of my ancestors came over to the colonies really early, like 1600s. And so perhaps somewhere in the 17th or 18th century, I wouldn't mind landing and living out a simpler life. What about you?
So I really did spend some time trying to think about interesting periods of history. But quite honestly, I was feeling nostalgia, but for the very recent past. I was just reflecting on how much fun it's been working with you and building a little family of folks who love to talk about entertainment and culture via podcasting. And I was like, if it must happen, it would be kind of cool to get cast back, not into the not too distant past. Uh, Maybe I've just graduated from college. I'm in that time period, but with this knowledge of this industry that's going to build around entertainment. Uh, and you know what? Get right in on the ground floor, do a little simple math, figure out all these people I have so much respect for now, who would be my peers going back 20 years ago, build some friendships, only use this to do my best to support others. I will leave original me alone. I don't want to be ripping any holes in the universe or destroying 2/3 of it, as Billy Shipton warns. But that just sounds like a great time to me. I don't want to erase my last 20 years almost in teaching. But there's kind of some poetry to the thought of having an alternate existence happening side by side.
You're a braver man than I, because I had a similar thought where I was like, I'm a nostalgic fella. I would love to go back and just like relive the 90s a bit or what have. But I was way too scared to be living in a time where another version of myself also existed. So you're far braver than I am in that regard, man. But I love the idea of getting into the ground floor of podcasting. It's almost when I think of early podcasting, Kevin Smith likes to think of himself as sort of one of the godfathers of podcasting, because he was doing internet radio pretty early. So yeah, I can dig the idea of getting into the ground floor there and being contemporaries with some of the first podcasters, helping to shape this thing that we all love so much today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the less cool answer I was trying to hide is I think I am fearful to go too far back, too far from the trappings and safety of modern technology and medicine. So yeah, let's just, I'm just gonna say it. This answer is partly just that I am a coward. Um in addition to hoping I could help build something beautiful and fun. Speaking of building something beautiful and fun, I have developed the latest of my ever more elaborate recaps of the episodes. So in case you were here with us and you did not have, 50 minutes to drop on rewatching Blink, Season 3, Episode 10, I'm here for a quick recap. All right, Kris, we open on Sally Sparrow hopping a wrought iron fence to take photos at a creepy abandoned estate. Why? Because old things make her sad, and sad is happy for deep people. Inside, she uncovers a series of disturbingly pointed messages painted on the wall behind a layer of aged wallpaper, messages addressed to her. The messages are so timely and specific that they allow her to duck just in time to dodge a flying rock from the window. On her way out the door, she sees a creepy angel statue with hands covering its eyes. It's our first glimpse of a weeping angel. Confused and freaked out, Sally shows up at her friend Kathy Nightingale's house, where she has an uncomfortable meeting with Kathy's brother, Larry. She also gets her first glimpse of David Tennant's 10th Doctor on a series of DVD Easter eggs, where he seems to be carrying out just one half of a conversation. Kathy and Sally return to the estate the next day. They're briefly separated, but before Sally can find her friend, a mysterious man shows up at the door, claiming to be Kathy's grandson. He has the receipts to prove it. Desperate for support, Sally attempts to bring her story to the police, only to catch a glimpse of the Doctor's abandoned TARDIS. Meanwhile, young detective Billy Shipton shamelessly and ceaselessly flirts with her. After Sally leaves him alone with the TARDIS and the weeping angels that followed her, Billy is promptly transported back to the 1960s. Moments later, Sally gets a phone call from an aged and terminally ill Billy in a nearby hospital. He's charming as hell. He gives her a clue about the DVD Easter eggs, and Sally realizes they were intended for her. Returning to the estate with wet blanket Larry and his conspiracy theorist level knowledge of the DVD Easter eggs, Sally carries out a smooth and seamless conversation with the pre-recorded message and finally understands the weight of the threat from the weeping angels. Sally and Larry manage a stressful run to the basement and use the TARDIS key to enter the ship. They initiate an emergency protocol from the doctor that moves the TARDIS and tricks the angels into staring into one another's eyes. They promptly turn to stone. 1 year later, Sally sees the doctor outside the DVD shop she is inexplicably running with Larry. She runs out to share the dossier she put together on the encounter. We realize that she really saved herself with all of this prep work. Our minds are blown. Kris, that's my recap. Are there any additional layers to the story that you would like to highlight before we move on?
There are no additional layers to the story. It's once again a fantastic recap. I thought I was going to have you this time. I thought I had an edit for you. It was before the recap even began. Listeners at home can't know this, but in our notes, you wrote that this was episode 3.9, season 3, episode 9. And I was not going to point it out. I was going to let you finish the recap. And then in this moment, when you asked me if I had anything to add, I was simply going to correct you that it was, in fact, season 3, episode 10. But you, like a pro, on the fly, no edit to the notes, corrected yourself before you ever made the mistake. A true professional. The recap was wonderful. Thank you, sir, as always.
Oh, Kris, thank you. I really love fishing for this compliment every time we sit down to pod together. All right. I think that's about enough. It's time for us to hit the premise of the show. Let's take a look at this episode as if it were a piece of great literature. And I might argue that it is. So this should be easy to do, but I can't wait to dig in. Do you want to kick us off?
I'll be happy to kick us off, man. Because you saw this before me. You rewatched it this time around. So you love this piece of media. But does it have any flaws?
Technically, yes. I can't even point out a flaw in this episode of television without pointing out that, like, it's just so tightly plotted, so well written, so well paced. It's the kind of thing I could watch this once a week and not get bored because you just pop through the story. I do love this piece of media. You're going to hear all about it for a long time. But there is one thing about this episode that I consider a major flaw. I consider it such a major flaw that my emotions did not even allow me to keep it out of my recap. Larry's just not doing it for me, man. He's a weak link. He is a weak spot. He is one of those characters that grows out of the early to mid 2000s, the sad, lonely nerd boy who seems to think he deserves to be with Carey Mulligan's sharp, smart, and extremely interesting character. And it's coming out of that time period where we saw those relationships just coming at us left and right. Probably a younger, less mature version of myself, maybe even sometimes enjoyed seeing some of those relationships as a younger, less mature person. But now they just frustrate me. They just feel so short-sighted and so toxic. It's a problem with this episode. And, again, I'm not here to take any super talented writers to task, right? I just admitted to having some of these flaws at one point in my life as well. But yeah, if you were gonna poke any holes in Stephen Moffat as a writer, he's written literally every single one of my favorite Doctor Who episodes. He's so talented. But yeah, this ability to do right by the complex female characters doesn't always come through.
Totally fair. I think that's wisely stated, right? We're not here to think we could do the job better, but it's okay to be objective and to observe things with a little bit of distance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Larry wasn't doing it for me either. It's a terrible name. No offense, to all the wonderful Larrys in the world. I think I'm similarly kind of smitten with the episode from top to bottom. Production value was great. It looks like a Doctor Who episode for sure. But I did feel that the writing, the exposition was like a little heavy when we have that initial Kathy disappears and she has to explain where she's gone and explain it in such good detail that we don't feel sad or sorry or we don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about that too much. We don't get too hung up on the idea. Like they even go so far as to tell us that like, well, my parents are both gone, so that's kind of cool. Not too many people are going to be sad that I've
Mm,
disappeared. There's just my brother to talk to. That all felt a little heavy-handed to start the episode,
sure.
especially where I hadn't spent a ton of time with Kathy, so I could have just shrugged it off. I could have just said, like, "Wow, that
Yeah.
sucks," but I won't think too much more about it. I'm into Sally and I'm into her mystery, and that could have kept me moving without the heavy-handed note from the past. That's okay though.
No, I think that's an absolutely fair criticism, Kris. Love Sally Sparrow. None of the tragedy that unfolds around this is her fault. She is actively working to fix this for everyone. But even though it's not her fault, that's a lot of weight on her shoulders, right? Like both Kathy and Billy, like they're living out these full lives, where they've got to keep this day with Sally at the forefront of their minds and shape their decisions and life choices around it. And they seem happy to do it, but it doesn't necessarily give Sally a lot to grapple with.
Mhm.
But yeah, it sounds like we're both pretty willing to shake that off because she's a great character and we had a ton of fun.
Oh, give me the Sally Sparrow show. She's so interesting from the jump.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah.
1,000,000%. This is something I did not put into the outline, Kris, but this is actually a good moment to ask you. I recently sent you a link to an article about an interview that Carey Mulligan and Bradley Cooper did when the movie Maestro was released. Did you happen to see that little clip?
I did not.
That is okay. The good news is it's not much. But in a clip during the promo tour for the film Maestro, Carey Mulligan brought up the process of acting within the TARDIS and having to pretend to be thrown around. And Bradley Cooper outed himself as knowing nothing about Doctor Who. So you've got this little moment of her kind of taking him to task for not knowing enough about Doctor Who and just being kind of shocked and appalled that she would have to explain everything. Uh, so yeah, more charming stuff from Carey Mulligan, our Sally Sparrow, our Daisy Buchanan, out there doing the good work of fighting for the Doctor.
Yeah, always nice to know that like a guest star spot like this is born from like a love for the media, right? That this person was probably already a fan of the show. That happens a lot with Star Wars, I think, right? A lot of folks just would love a chance to pop up in Star Wars, no matter how big and successful they might be in other uh, forms of media. So I like the idea that Carey Mulligan's like a true Who fan and was excited to take part in her little episode.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, Kris. Let's get a little bit deeper thematically into the episode. Now we both love nerd content. You gave me a really smart answer about a fixed point in time earlier. What familiarity, if any, do you have with the concept of the bootstrap paradox?
The thing that happens in the future always happened in order to affect a thing in the past. I think a lot about Back to the Future with this idea, right? So you find out that, oh, it always happened this way. So maybe it happened in the past in order to affect the future, but it's the idea that an event happens due to time travel, which contributed somehow to the constant always timeline.
Yes, that is. I think every single thing you said is correct. And I'm going to add an extra layer on top of what you were saying. That is, within this bootstrap paradox, something also is created within the paradox that has no clear source of origin outside of this time loop. So you mentioned Back to the Future. Maybe it is Marty essentially creating the song Johnny Be Good.
That's exactly what I was thinking of. Yes.
Uh, in the world of that movie, Johnny Be Good exists via bootstrap paradox. He inspires the song that he hears in the future. Where did it come from? We were very recently talking about Lost with our buddy John Aspler, PhD. I suspect someday we'll be talking with him about the bootstrap paradox. When we talk about John Locke, Richard Alpert, and a mysterious compass that exists only via bootstrap paradox. So this won't be our last time talking
But
about this, Kris.
we'll talk about atom bombs and so many things when we get around to
Oh,
it.
yes. Oh, yes, indeed. Now that we've talked a little bit about what it is, do you have any thoughts on these sort of like time paradox concepts in storytelling? Are there any pros and cons to that for you?
I mean, I understand that it challenges the logic, right? Um, I think sometimes about the reverse flash going back in time to kill Barry Allen's mother, which then creates the Flash. But if the Flash didn't already exist, then why did he have a villain in the future, the Reverse Flash, who went back in time to kill his mom? I understand that that can be a lot to wrap your head around. And for people who aren't into sci-fi, it just feels a bit like overly complicated or overly simplistic, perhaps overly convenient storytelling. I love it. I love like the aha moment
Mm-hmm.
when you find out that the thing is the thing that caused the thing. When the pieces of the puzzle fall into place. And because it's illogical, because you can't quite wrap your head around it, I think time and time travel is a concept too big for our finite mortal minds. And so this kind of storytelling works for me. I think it's fun sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I cannot emphasize how much I am not a physicist. But no matter who you are, the more you try to conceptualize how time works and what it means on the scale of the universe, it will break your brain. So I do love these stories that are timey-wimey, where time does funny things. As you know from a recent podcast that has not yet been released as we are having this conversation, I love me some Kurt Vonnegut.
Mhm.
He loves some timey-wiminess. The clocks are playing tricks on me. I'm a good fan of The Good Place. Is that in your wheelhouse?
We've begun.
Oh, you've begun.
Yeah, we've begun.
Okay. So I'm just gonna throw a name out there, and someday it'll make sense to you. Jeremy Bearimy.
Oh, okay, writing it down. Jeremy Bearimy. You got it.
And some listeners out there having a smile right now. So there you have it. Um, all right, Bootstrap Paradox. These are fun stories, and even more fun for me within the world of Doctor Who, where we've got a time traveler like the Doctor who claims to be able to understand things like fixed points in time. So I love the idea of maybe some of these things that are created within a bootstrap paradox might be the types of things that serve as anchors at a fixed point in time, right? It's something special, is imbued with power. So yeah, I'm here for it. I'm down for it.
Well, now that we've talked a little bit about the themes, let's get a little bit more tactile. Which of the design elements in this episode felt most successful for you?
I know which one I want to say. I hope I'm not stealing yours. Um, there's so much great stuff in here. We won't get out of this segment or out of this podcast without talking more about the Weeping Angels themselves. But I think even before we meet the Weeping Angels, that whole opening sequence of the messages beneath the wallpaper, it just works so perfectly. You've got that sort of horror movie scrawl, but then for the message to feel so light and airy, for it to have the voice of the Doctor in those words, as someone who is new to Who, that might not have been as evident to you. But it feels like a message that the 10th Doctor would write. To see that light airiness and that horror context, it's really striking. The way they managed to get all those perfect wallpaper tears to reveal the writing, it makes you feel that passage of time, and it makes the episode work.
Yeah, I love that. And don't worry, listen, it's the nature of the beast. We take turns. Sometimes you go first and you get the good answer. But all you've really done is given me a chance to smuggle. So
Hell
um,
yes.
let me comment first because I was going to say that opening sequence. I was going to take it right from the first
Yeah.
shot of Sally's boot coming down the wrought iron fence. You see the boot in the fence before you see anything else. It's in the rain and the tone is set. So I think that whole sequence, yeah, it works great. But I think more generally, that house, that estate, that this takes place in, daytime, nighttime, during the horror elements, during the daytime scenes with Kathy, it really works. That it's a haunting facade, and then it's a creepy rundown inside. What does our pal Larry call it? I think Scooby Doo's house. You live in Scooby Doo's house. So that set design in general worked for me, in all the purposes it was put to in the episode. But my real answer, my pick, is a specific sequence in the cinematography at work there. The Weeping Angels, as they're closing in on the TARDIS at the end, and they've caused the lights to blink, and so you're getting the strobe effect. And each time they're shifting their positions, they're contorting their faces a little bit more. It's suspenseful, it's horrifying, and they really use that light, dark. You can see them, you can't see them, to wonderful effect. And so I really enjoyed that sequence at the end there. So actually, now that I have mentioned the angels and that really sort of creepy final sequence, how well did those weeping angels work for you as villains? Did they add to the suspense, or was it a little too silly?
So I think the weeping angels are really incredible. Again, media.slash.lit@gmail.com. But as just someone who's a new Who fan, we spent a lot of time with the Daleks and the Cybermen, which are both potentially great concepts that can get overdone. I think since Blink has aired, we've seen the Weeping Angels deployed in really engaging and creative ways. And I think we've seen them maybe overemployed less successfully in other properties. But right here, it's such a cool, raw concept. A horror villain, as the Doctor puts it, they're the only psychopaths in the universe to kill you nicely. No mess, no fuss. They just zap you into the past and let you live to death. It's such a great concept.
Love that. Yeah, really great quote too, and well delivered.
How about you as a new Whovian? Like, this is only your second villain in Heaven Sent. You got another very conceptual sort of villain. How'd these Weeping Angels stack up for you?
Really enjoyed the Weeping Angels. I think they work very well during the watch. I think as I reflected on them, I've been able to poke some holes and ask some questions about their nature, but they work really well in the suspenseful moments of the episode. I love that the concept itself is scary, right? A creature that can only be observed, and when you're not watching, it's moving ever closer. It's fast. It's terrifying. As long as you can see it, you're safe. But as soon as you can't, it's upon you. That's so scary. But I really enjoy that Doctor Who found a way to make it, to tie it into the time travel, the idea of concepts in physics and concepts of the physical world, so that they're quantum locked. The Doctor tells us, right? So it immediately you're thinking of Schrodinger and cats and alive and dead. What a great way to take what is already a classic sort of horror element, the monster you can't see, and giving it a science-y, sci-fi twist. Really well conceived. So I like these Weeping Angels. I think I have some questions about how fast they really do move or don't move, because I feel like our heroes probably should have got
Sure.
at some point, if they can truly move between the blink of an eye. But yeah, I really enjoyed their faces contorting. They don't eat people. There's no mess, as the Doctor tells us, but they still have these horrifying fangs. They have really nasty mouths that look like they're ready to gobble your head in one bite. So that was wonderful. I do have some questions about, you don't die. You take all the quote unquote potential energy. Shouldn't that go with you to the past? I'm not quite sure. The days you would have lived out idea. Like I said, after I stopped watching the episode and I began squinting at it a little bit, I realized I shouldn't think too much about it, because it kind of breaks down in that regard. Because Kathy still lives a life. In fact, it's a full life, and within a bootstrap paradox concept, you might say that's how it was always meant to go. right? She was always going to travel back in time and live from the 20s forward. So this like the days that were stolen from you, I don't quite understand that, but it's very scary to watch in the moment. You're not thinking about that in the moment when the angels are pressing in and you're desperate for your heroes not to blink.
Absolutely. Yeah, I suppose you can apply some whatever loose sort of multiversal logic to it that you want. But the fact that time is something we can't control, but perhaps these time lords can identify mixed points in time. Perhaps these angels can manipulate time differently. It is potentially another sort of cool unknown. I think my favorite thing about them, apart from how scary they are, is at least in this episode, just how simple the concept is, right? Like, you've got these very nice sculpts, but at the end of the day, this is like the most basic editing trick in the book. Get this shot, move the statue. Get that shot, move the statue.
Yeah.
Um, but it's visceral and real and it's believable and it
Hmm.
works. And whenever something that technically simple is that effective, I really love it.
Yeah, totally agree. Like I said, it works so well. You don't think too much about it. You just are living it. You're just terrified by it.
Absolutely. Any other Weeping Angel thoughts?
Grateful they don't exist in my world, at least that I don't know that they do. There's that.
For sure. But at least, if they do, you might get to do some of that silversmithing with Johnny Tremaine. So there you
Yeah,
go.
right.
Listen, before we go any deeper into this episode, right? Little baby Carey Mulligan is at the center of it. She is the driving force in this episode. This is partly a week off for David Tennant. So you bring in this cast, you go David Tennant light in this episode. But even little baby Carey Mulligan, I happen to find really compelling. How do you feel about this performance as Sally Sparrow?
So totally taken and charmed by this performance, right? Her character is interesting from the jump without saying a word. As she moves through that house, she's got her flashlight. You have no idea who she is or why she's in this house, but she's tenacious. She's curious. She's got her camera going for her, which now you've got the sort of artsy, interesting girl vibe working in her favor. But Carey Mulligan does a wonderful bit of acting with just a look and a tilt of the head. I really enjoy when she's standing in front of Larry or Lawrence, and he doesn't exactly recognize her. He's like, "We've met," which friggin' idiot. It's been like a day and a half, not even. And she's like this gorgeous human that other people can't even like stand in front of without losing their composure.
Hmm.
A la the detective later, and so he's a moron, but she's wonderful in that moment where she's letting him come to the realization of how they know each other. She's so charming. Her character is unbelievably interesting when she utters that line so casually, like it's the most normal thing anybody has ever said. That
Hmm.
uh, sadness is happy for deep people. Take all my money. Be my friend for the rest of my life. Can we please at least have a cup of coffee together so I can hear more of these interesting thoughts? Um, totally worked. Sally Sparrow. I think I said it earlier in the episode. Give me the Sally Sparrow show. I'll watch her go on Adventures of the Week for at least 3 seasons.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because part of what she is something that feels a little bit familiar. We've already talked more than once about how we both have a deep affection for Tim Burton back in his prime. If this episode of television existed 15 years earlier, like Tim Burton would be doing everything he could to get her in some deep eyeliner, uh, and some black clothes, to hop in and battle a spirit or something, take down Beetlejuice or whatever. With like you said, with that casual delivery of that line. But I'm so happy that she's not that. There's a place for that. I'm so happy that exists in pop culture. Uh, but yeah, she can walk in all those worlds. She's capable. She's not defeatist or bitter or resentful or sad. Like she is just acting and appreciating people. Another thing she does very casually in addition to delivering that line, um, is just how instantly she decides to stay with aged Billy,
Mm.
um, in those last hours of his life. She just knows she has to be there
Hmm.
because that connection meant something to her. And she has the emotional intelligence to recognize that he just lived a lifetime towards supporting her in this moment, to be there at the ready with a phone call when it was the right moment. So yeah, she's got all those fun artsy things about her, but she doesn't fall into like, a depressed gothic trope, and she's not a manic pixie dream girl. Like she's just capable and smart and and a great character.
Man, so well said. I was really charmed in that scene as well when the tear falls from her eye. To your point, she's such a deep feeling person.
Hmm.
It didn't take living a lifetime with Billy to truly care about him, right? Really wonderful. Well, if that may be your call out moment for Sally, do you have a favorite moment overall in the episode or a favorite quote?
All right. I think we might end up doing some smuggles here. It's probably pretty clear to listeners that my favorite and quite possibly your favorite, you can correct me in a minute. It's that whole Sally Sparrow, sad is happy for deep people. Before I sat down to rewatch this episode so I could talk about it with you, Kris, I don't think I had watched this episode in, like maybe a decade. And I thought about that quote many times, but I was far enough removed from this episode that I forgot that it was a Doctor Who quote, and I forgot that Sally Sparrow was the one who said it. So it just like reached deep into my soul when I heard it. I was like, oh, no wonder I love Blink so much. That's one of my favorite quotes, not just from this episode, but from almost anything.
Isn't it funny how something can make such an impression on us that way that it sort of works its way into your? I think we talk about it sometimes in the show, right? How has it affected your style, influenced your outlook? But yeah, we lose the source. What a fun rediscovery for you. That's awesome, man.
How about you? What's a favorite line or moment for you?
Well, if I had gone first, I probably would have said that, but we'll leave that alone. No, I think for me, I'll have a couple of smuggles here. I really love that last scene with the doctor where
Mm,
Sally realizes that it's always been her. It's always been her. Like you were saying about her character before, she's just capable. She's not a manic pixie dream girl. She's not here for somebody else's story. This is her story. Has always been her story. She's always been the one guiding her through this journey to the point where she needed to be. I really, really enjoyed that moment for Sally because it brought her such a peace, right? That she's able to instantly know she can move on with her life. And I like it because earlier in the episode, in that scene you were talking about with aged Billy, as things are starting to fall into
hmm.
place, you're beginning to put the pieces together. Billy's walking her through what he knows, which isn't much, but it's some. The doctor is feeling ever more omnipotent,
Hmm.
right? When Billy's saying, um, he said that someday you'll understand, but that I never would. That just feels like something that the omnipotent God character would say, right? Trying to tell you to have peace with a thing. One day, someone will understand. You'll never know. The doctor felt so big in that scene, despite not being present. Um, this whole episode was giving him more and more of a godlike vibe. I think that's typical of time travelers, right? They've
Hmm.
been forward, they've been back, they know things nobody else could know. Um, but in that moment, at the end of the episode, you realize the doctor is just the fortunate. He's the benefactor of this happenstance. He's lucky that Sally Sparrow is so with it, because if not for Sally Sparrow, the doctor stays stuck in 1969. This wasn't the doctor saving Sally from the weeping angels. This was Sally surviving the weeping angel so that she could save the doctor from 1969.
Hmm.
And that last scene really, her performance sells it. Really loved that punctuation mark on her journey that she's always been in control. It's always been her story.
Absolutely. Now, Kris, we can double right back to another favorite moment or two, but based on what you just said, I have to jump to my next question and just ask you this. Now, you didn't really get to spend much quality time with David Tennant as the Doctor in this episode. Just those glimpses, but they clearly made an impression on you. But my questions are, number one, what was your first impression of him? And then number two, does anything feel familiar about the character based on that full episode you spent with Peter Capaldi in Heaven Sent? And on the flip side, does anything feel really foreign or different to you?
Yeah, I think I'll start with familiar because I think what was most notable to me were the differences. So as far as familiar, it was that sense of omnipotence, of being totally in control in a way that we can barely understand. Almost an unshakable confidence. But where that manifested sometimes as a cockiness in Capaldi, especially in that Heaven Sent episode, I find David Tennant's Doctor felt more humble, more curious, more sort of delighted by all that's happening to him, as opposed to feeling in control and purposeful and driven. He felt more fun. He felt sprightly. There's almost, when he sits down with Billy in 1969, there's a madness to him that's really charming. He reminds me of the Mad Hatter to a certain extent. He's a bit cheeky. There's a twinkle in his eye. I really enjoyed this Doctor's vibe. I think right from, to your point about the note, I didn't know how I should read those words as far as it relates to like this Doctor's voice, but just the punctuation he uses, the little, like, no, really, now, the sense that even in that moment, he's being casual and fun, and like, he doesn't take any of this too seriously. He says to Sally at the end of the episode there, oh, my life, it's a bit funny. Things happen to me in the wrong order sometimes. He doesn't seem bothered by that. He doesn't seem superior in light of that knowledge. He just sort of is along for the ride, a bit Puck-like in that way. Like I said, a sprightly fellow.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because, I would agree with you. Like, one of those similarities is the confidence that is hiding a lot of vulnerability. The Doctor knows how to act, omniscient, but he doesn't always know what's going on. Right? We were talking about bootstrap paradoxes, and I'd never thought about this until prepping for this podcast. But I was taking all those notes, and I was like, ooh, I don't know if there is an in-universe answer for this or not. media.slash.lit@gmail.com. But I was like, did he learn everything he knows about the Weeping Angels through a bootstrap paradox, or did he already know what they were? And until someone reminds me that there's some canon that disproves that, I kind of almost want that to be my headcanon, that he knows about the angels via bootstrap paradox.
Giving Sally even more importance and power in the story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So fun. But yeah, you mentioned David Tennant's delivery. Before we completely move on from just moments that we love, I've got this one note in red because David Tennant delivers possibly the most important line in all of New Who, because it's the thing you can insert to answer any question or plot hole that's ever going to exist in Doctor Who, ever will exist in Doctor Who. And that is, people assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a nonlinear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Yeah, unbelievable. I think that was going to be my smuggle there, my second answer for a favorite quote in the episode, because I think no, it's perfect. Because I'm glad you brought it up, because for me it was both like a very meta moment, like, hey, this is where that's from. I knew that was Doctor Who. Now I know what Doctor Who. But to your point, from a storytelling perspective, because I enjoy these kinds of stories, that sort of an answer doesn't bother me. I love that can work its way into a lexicon for a property like this and just be accepted and be delighting that, this concept is too big. It requires words like wibbly wobbly and timey wimey. And that's the only way we can really, something Seuss like about it.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that moment.
Absolutely. Any other smuggles for you, Kris, before I steal another favorite moment?
No, I think that does it for me there. Oh, you know what I will say? Maybe not a favorite moment, but a favorite element of the episode. I really like that we, as the audience, have an effect on the weeping angels. Did you catch that?
No, tell me more.
There are moments in the episode where they freeze to stone and no one is observing them but us.
Oh, you just blew my mind, Kris Ingersoll. Woo,
um, yeah, quite a bit. We see them totally stone, and it's only us who are looking at them.
that's awesome.
Rewatched the episode, so I didn't catch it the first time, but when I watched it a second time, I watched it with that in mind, where I was like, "Holy
That's
shit!"
really cool.
And and again, I didn't want them to come for me, so just glad they don't exist in my world.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Uh, three mini smuggles for me. Just as someone who will eventually watch the whole David Tennant run someday, Kris, the number of times you will hear some version of, and I'm sorry. I am very, very sorry.
Oh, as he said to Billy, right? That it was going to take a long time to
Yeah.
deliver the
That's a
message.
that's a big
Ah,
tenism. I'm very sorry. I'm so so sorry. we get a number of those, and often in some of my favorite episodes. Number two, we already pointed out that we were both moved by aged Billy and Sally in the hospital, and we talked about some of the stuff that worked
mm,
there. But just when he says it was raining when we met, and Sally says it's the same rain, I shed a tear on my most recent watch through right there. Woo,
yeah,
really, really crazy
yeah.
stuff. And
Again, she's just a poet. She's just so deep.
oh yeah, and then finally, I'm gonna kind of turn this into an on the fly question because we've been dancing around this all night. But when we finally get the two-part conversation between Sally and the doctor on video, is it just me or did they somehow have chemistry despite the fact that they're not even in the same room?
I can't agree more. I don't want her to be his companion because
Hmm.
I don't know enough about the companion yet, but forgive me. So forgive me if I'm incorrect in saying, like, I don't see Sally at all as a second fiddle or a sidekick figure for the doctor. They're certainly on like absolute equal footing. Um, but I would love to see them spend more time together because of this very moment. You're right. The chemistry is certainly there. It begins earlier, where she starts to have a conversation with the tape, kind of inadvertently, right? I can't hear you. And even right there, it feels like they're in the same room. It feels like they're having that conversation, and it's especially palpable when she gets through the whole thing with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you can feel the irritation, the heat, the putting the doctor back on track. It's just wild to have that chemistry with a DVD menu. Way to go, Carey Mulligan.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes up again later when they are in person, right? I think that the doctor is super intrigued by Sally Sparrow. Like, he would rather not have to go fight the four things in a lizard. Um, he's he lingers. He looks back like, who are you, Sally Sparrow? It's really quite wonderful. Okay. We talked about flaws earlier, but in general, would you say that the episode has aged well? Either from a story standpoint or from a production standpoint, does this feel like it's an artifact from another time? And if so, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
So I'm gonna say no. I don't feel like it's aged. We could nitpick perhaps like the video quality. This is like pre full HD Doctor Who recordings and whatnot. Uh, but despite the fact that this whole story hinges around, DVD player Easter eggs, which feel pretty dated, this story is such a story about being trapped in certain points in time and trying to make do with the technology of the moment. Like it dates the story, but for me, it doesn't hurt the story at all for it to exist within that moment. That was always the way Sally Sparrow was going to help the doctor in that moment. Um, and I think it's more cool than anything else. Did I also chuckle when Carey Mulligan called Larry and said, "Do you have a portable DVD player?"
Seriously.
I still think it works. How about you, Kris?
Yeah, I agree. There's a real timelessness to the story. I think in the nature of the villains, it speaks to something very visceral in us. The curiosity of Sally as a character, this person who finds herself sort of thrust into a mystery. If you're a fan of that kind of storytelling, you imagine you might be the kind of person who would do just what she's doing, which is getting curious and not stopping till you've got all the answers. And so there's so much about this that I think is timeless in the way it speaks to our little humanities. Um, Visually, I think it holds up just
Hmm.
fine. I think, yeah, it totally works. I was not sure what to make of Larry's calling her out for having quote unquote just 17 DVDs. I don't know. It seems like not everybody's a cinephile. 17 DVDs feels like a decent number to own, but maybe in 2007, everybody was just rocking 40 plus DVDs that they'd accumulated in the last less than a decade. I mean, how many DVDs did the average person have in 2007?
Well, this is going to be a tough one for me to answer, Kris, because it's going to force me to draw too much of a line of comparison between myself and Larry, who I have already lambasted in this particular podcast.
Oh no.
I can't imagine I ever would have harassed anyone over the size of their DVD collection. So I'm going to throw myself that bone there. But you know those large Rubbermaid bins?
Yes.
I spent 4 years of college, like every time I moved back and forth from home to my dorm room. I can't remember the exact number, but I'll just say I would fill several of those Rubbermaid bins with physical media, DVDs, CDs, because it was so essential to me to have myself on display in that way. And in terms of like the media that I owned, that these were like invitations to conversation. Can my friends come over? Can we
Got
pop
it.
in this DVD? Can we throw on this album? And the amount of muscle and energy and space in the vehicle that went into those Rubbermaid bins is wild in a world where I still own physical media, but I've largely embraced the practicality of a more digital lifestyle. So I get where he's coming from. He's still being a gatekeepy weirdo, despite the fact that I
Yeah.
understand why 17 sounded like a small number to him.
That was really generous of you. I know how much you dislike the character, so really generous of you to go there. But I'm like, yeah, Sally doesn't probably doesn't like movies that much. I guess if she's like three, I've got three DVDs, it's perhaps remarkable, but
Hmm.
gatekeepy is a good way of calling it.
Now we're getting into some of our little segments and bits that we like to do at the end of an episode. Uh, we haven't really been lucking out with great episodes for your cell phone check, Kris, because we do have cell phones in this episode, so we got to see how they impacted the story. Uh, but a question I often like to ask has to do with this concept that hindsight is 2020. Even if we love a piece of media, if you could go back and make an edit, there's almost always something you could do to make something a little bit sharper, a little bit stronger, perhaps more palatable to your tastes in a new place and time. I'm really happy to throw this one to you first because I feel like I've gotten a lot of great choices teed up for me. So I want to give you the first shot at hindsight is 2020. What is one edit you would make to strengthen this episode?
I mean, just first and foremost, she doesn't end up with Larry at the end. Just baseline, it doesn't work for me. I don't want that for Sally. I didn't need that to be the end note. Her character, I understood that she had peace in the way she settled it with the doctor. The way she performed that moment. Didn't need her to grab Larry's hand to end the episode.
Here's what I wrote in my notes, Kris. That stupid little chime sound when she grabs his hand can go to hell. It can just go straight to hell.
Amazing. So glad we're on the same page there. Not at all surprised, but certainly grateful. That's great, man. Yeah, that charm sound can go right to hell.
Uh,
Uh, Wow. So other than that, I don't have any. I think often when I answer this question, I'm thinking about shots I would change or remove, or maybe from a different angle. But in this case, it is a little bit. It's two story elements. Not that I want to critique the writers, but I do think that a bootstrap paradox type of story, it only really works as long as, despite that, you stick to the rules you've established, right? Despite the illogical nature of it to a certain extent, the paradoxical nature of it, um, it still has to work within its own world, its own set of rules. And I think this episode worked so hard to help fill in all of the uh, each step in the journey, how information traveled from one time to another time in order to make sure that this worked out exactly the way it's meant to. It did such a good job of that that in the two instances where it failed to answer the question, I was left feeling like extra disappointed
Mm.
about it. We don't know who threw the rock through the window. That's never addressed. So it's like one of the very first things that shows Sally that she's into something weird here.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this note behind this wallpaper. There's my name. It seems to be speaking directly to me. Oh my gosh, it's speaking to me in real time. A rock just came through the window that would have hit me in the head if I had not ducked. We don't know who, I mean, did I miss something? I don't think we know who threw the rock or why. I don't think it was the weeping angel, but that's the next thing you see when she then looks to the broken window. It shows you the weeping angel. And so I almost thought that the doctor had something to do with the rock getting thrown in order to catch her attention so that she would see the weeping angel, but he didn't know that much about it necessarily. So that was a hole that, because everything else is so tight, and because I want to buy into the bootstrap paradox, I wish they had just left out. We didn't need the rock to get thrown, or make sure you're going to answer that question if you do throw the rock. And then similarly, Kathy doesn't know anything about the big picture. Kathy only knows her part in it. She was with Sally in this house. Now she's in the past. She knows somebody came to the door.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right. But she doesn't necessarily know that there was the note. She doesn't know that she has to push Sally further on the journey, which is all okay. The episode doesn't play that way. But at the end, those photos, that letter, it's in the package to the doctor. It left me, it created more questions for me. I guess perhaps that just added like context for the doctor as he was playing out his part of it, but he has actually no direct interaction with Kathy's part of the story at all. It doesn't get mentioned in the DVDs, in the Easter egg. So again, just something that they could have just left out or been more thoughtful about when they were
Sure.
finally packaging this thing up.
Now, those two things don't bother me quite as much as they bother you. And with, I hadn't thought too much about the Kathy part. That is a good point. I suppose my explain it away answer would be like, she loves her friend and she's just imagining her like in those moments of fear, like, where has Kathy gone? I want to resolve that as quickly as I can. But but you're right. Even that logic falls apart a little bit. So I will confront her with a mysterious stranger at the door. Maybe that kind of pokes some holes in my explanation just a little bit.
Yeah, but to be fair, you're not thinking these things when you're watching it.
Yes.
The episode is working. The story is working. These elements are working on you. The rock is suspenseful and it's intriguing. It builds the mystery. It's only afterwards, when you're starting to parse it out, you're preparing notes for a podcast, that you start to nitpick these things.
Now, can I tell you why I genuinely love the rock? The rock thrown at Sally Sparrow in this episode specifically.
Yeah.
Not Dwayne the Rock
I was going to say not Dwayne Johnson. Okay.
At least not in this particular moment. Perhaps that's a conversation for another day. When she peels back that wallpaper, I forget if it's 2 or 3 different ducks that we get before she ducks, because you wouldn't. You'd be processing, why is there this creepy message on the wallpaper? And what I love about The Rock is that it is this visceral sign that, like, oh, this message is not someone messing with me. This is creating the illusion that someone is communicating with me in real time.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of what drives her straight to Kathy in that moment. It's part of what keeps the propulsion going. Now, to the best of my knowledge, we've not gotten an explanation confirmed as to who threw the rock. There's a whole universe of Doctor Who audio dramas and books. Perhaps that answer exists somewhere deep in the canon. The most obvious answer, I think, is the one you proposed. It's probably the Doctor closing out that loop at some point. I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to time travel to this moment, throw the rock. But I do love the idea that if you ever had a great story writing idea, you a great storytelling idea, you could give someone else the impetus or the reason to throw that rock at Sally Sparrow, to throw those events into motion in that way, should the dossier fall into the hands of someone else. Did someone want this to happen? Um, there's no part of me that expects to ever see Carey Mulligan in a Doctor Who again. Uh, but if we ever did, obviously it would be a great old time, and you could possibly have fun with it there, or it could even be a throwaway joke in an episode. There's something else going on, and the Doctor just really needs to do this one thing. We could
Yeah.
see it from another perspective, or I don't need to know for sure.
Yeah.
It can be an open mystery. All right. So my hindsight is 2020. It's pretty simple. I don't hate this thing about the episode that I would change. It is fine. But I'm just going to argue, I don't think we need that little coda at the end of the episode where we get the montage of real life statues and one more repetition from the
Mm-hmm.
Doctor of just don't blink. And it's not that I'm super down on it. It's a little on the nose. It's a little cheesy. That's fine. It was this fun one-off episode. And I'm probably partly colored by the fact that I know we're going to get a lot more time with the Weeping Angels in different capacities that work to varying degrees of success. But I just feel like the episode is so tight, and I think that those statues were designed so well. They feel familiar while also feeling like this new sci-fi element. And I think they told a story that communicated that last little monologue. It's maybe needlessly winky to the audience for me, and I think it would be slightly more perfect without it.
Yeah, I think that that's a really great call out because I had questions based on that last little sequence. I was going to ask you when you began to talk about these weeping angels appearing later, right, recurring in Doctor Who lore. I was curious if they're always angel statues because that last little sequence makes you kind of think like, oh, are they trying to imply that any
Mm-hmm.
statue in our world could in fact be one of these lonely assassins? But I assume no. I assume that they're always angels who appear to be weeping because they're covering their faces.
I'm going to say a short answer of yes is pretty much the correct answer to your question. We could get a little more nitpicky, but I'd say yes is basically the correct answer.
Okay. Yeah, so in general, I agree with you that sequence definitely didn't add anything to the episode other than an extra minute and a half, I think it was.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hindsight is 2020, and we can leave that in the rearview mirror. I have another little sequence for us before we end this episode. We see a number of pairings, and we can imagine a few more. I'd like to play a game. Do you ship it, Randy?
There is a lot of chemistry flying around in this episode, Kris. Some of it I like, some of it I hate. This sounds like a perfect game for us to play right now.
Cool. Let's kick it off with a true couple. Kathy Nightingale and Ben Wainwright. What did you think of this pairing?
So Kris, they only get a brief moment together on screen. I know the timing of this story of what happened to Kathy when she gets sent back in time didn't 100% work for you. But I found this to be like a really fun and successful little meet cute, where they have this slightly sarcastic sort of exchange. They establish this nice little dynamic between the two of them where it feels like they can both get their shots in, and he just kind of follows her home. And he's very charming in his little moment. I ship it. I love it for Kathy. I think it helped her adjust to the 1920s. But yeah, maybe tied up a little too neatly with a bow. How about you?
No, I completely agree. Yeah, and this story element really worked for me. There's other things around it and the way it related to the bootstrap paradox that I could nitpick later. But no, this little story within the story was quite lovely. She first finds a way to the countryside, and here's this guy, and they immediately, to your point, the chemistry is a little contentious,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where am I? Hull. No, I'm not. Stop saying Hull. And then he just follows her home. I think earlier when we talked about whether or not the episode aged well, we probably could have talked about the different ways the male pursuit of
Mm.
female attention
Mm-hmm.
manifested in this episode, and whether or not how well that holds up. But I think a lot of that does hinge on how it's received,
Sure.
right? And that's true in the world. And Kathy is certainly charmed, right? As she's walking away, and she's like, "You're gonna you're following
Yep.
me? You're gonna stop?" Doesn't seem particularly bothered by that. It's charming. It's a wonderful little meet cute. Um,
You told him you were 18.
she calls her a cow,
Yeah, yeah.
lying cow. Yeah. So I ship it.
Kris, let me throw a ship to you so I don't get to have all the fun taking the first shot at these. Do you ship it, Sally Sparrow and Kathy Nightingale, aka Sparrow and Nightingale? It so works. Do you ship it?
It does work. I almost exclaimed it before they did in the episode. Uh, these are certainly two best friends that I'd love to see continue on their adventures together. The tenacious Sally, who is undaunted by her slightly less brave, sort of little more fearful counterpart who's along for the ride and excited, but going to be the one just lingering back a bit. Loved their dynamic. And absolutely, if this was a lovely little romance, two mystery solving ladies, Sparrow and Nightingale, I am in.
A little bonus question here, Kris. A little nod to another episode of Media Lit. We're like circa 2007 here. I feel like Sally and Kathy have been friends for a while. Do you think these two went to go see Coyote Ugly together in theaters as teenagers?
I can only hope so. And they rode home just belting the lyrics at the top of their lungs. They bought the CD before they went to see the movie. They were already into the soundtrack. Absolutely, man.
Awesome, awesome.
Great question. So I take it you ship it?
I do, I do. I echo everything you said.
Cool. Well, let me throw one back to you then. And I'm really excited to get to ask you about this particular pairing. Sally and Lawrence Nightingale. Again, Sparrow and Nightingale. Does it work?
I think we've established pretty well that the answer is a big old fat no. I've already said what those chimes when their hands touch at the end can do. And we haven't even acknowledged the fact that this whole relationship starts with Larry wandering around naked in his sister's apartment. What the hell's going on there, Larry?
Yeah. What is wrong with this guy?
Like on the one hand, like, okay, busting into someone's apartment at 1 a.m. is not cool. But Larry, this is your sister's apartment, man.
Really odd. I completely agree. And you know what? While Sparrow Nightingale works, and I liked it on their little shop they run
Sure,
together at the
sure.
end. As far as a ship name, they're either what Lally or Sari. It
Yeah. Do
sucks.
you know what else can go right to hell? Our brilliant artsy Sally Sparrow is just dicking around a little DVD shop with Larry and not out there doing great things. Give me a break.
Thank goodness she's finally closed this chapter of her life on this paradox, so she can move on now to her next great mystery.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you have anything to add there?
Nah, they suck.
Yeah. All right. Kris, do you ship it? Sally and Billy Shipton.
So yes and no. I think you've already alluded to this, but I fully ship Sally and Elder Billy Shipton.
Yes.
He's charming. They have chemistry. There's weight to their conversation. I'm way more moved by the moves on Elder Billy Shipton than by younger Billy Shipton. In fact, when he repeats his line, "Life is short and you are hot,"
Hmm.
it's just awful when he's a young man, but it's delightful when it's the older Billy. So I absolutely ship Sally and who I'll call William Shipton.
Yes, not to mention the fact that he shifts it to life is long and you are hot.
Life is long and your heart. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Much better the second time around. The first time, honestly, he would have skeeved me right out, and I would have been pleased to see Sally slap Billy in his pursuit the first time around. The only reason he gets away with it is because she's so receptive to it. She's quite seemingly, Carey Mulligan's really doing it right, where she seems charmed by him at that first meeting at the front desk in the police station, where his whole demeanor shifts at the sight of her. She knows that he's taken by her looks. She's not bothered by it. And then when she slips up with Sally Shipton and then giggles her way out of there, "Don't look at me, don't look at me," it becomes charming, and I'm much more into the idea.
mhm.
But I was glad Billy got zipped away to the past, I'll be honest with you. What about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And as much as I love elderly Billy and as much as I do get the sense that young Billy mostly stayed on the side of Sally still being comfortable with the flirtation. We were kind of pushing it, and it was a little weird to see him go chasing another Sally back in the 60s.
Oh, they look alike, don't they? Did he not marry a look-alike Sally with the same
So
name?
yeah, not the best look for you, Billy, but you became a charming man.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we talked a little bit about the chemistry between these next two already, but I'm excited to hear your proper answer. Do you ship it, Sally and the doctor?
Do they have chemistry? Yes. Could she keep up with him? Absolutely. Do I think it's best for her? I don't think so. I don't know that. I don't think she can do it. I've got some unfair advantage here and knowing more of the doctor's history and how it pertains to issues of the heart. But I don't think it's going to be good for anyone if that happens.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with you in general. I mean, he's an adventurer. He's, you know, in bygone terms, he's sort of an adventurer of the high seas, never in one place for too long. But I'm okay with watching like a really, really steamy hookup. Like they
Sure.
share a little bit more of an adventure together. Got to solve some mystery. Maybe it's a tough evening. There's a stakeout. The stakes are high. I don't mind seeing these two make good on some of that chemistry that was so palpable.
There are some recent events in Doctor Who that I can't spoil for you yet that could lead to some interesting conversations about this someday. We'll save that for a future pod. While we're talking about the Doctor and flirtation and Billy Shipton, the ultimate flirt, one of the first people that Billy Shipton meets in the 60s is the Doctor. So do you ship it, the Doctor and Billy Shipton?
Again, I find it really hard to be charmed by Billy, but I find it really easy to be charmed by the doctor. And so I guess if I only picture the side of the conversation where the doctor's head is leaned against the wall, sort of turning it listlessly side to side as he's talking through what sounds like absolute madness to Billy Shipton, I can see a world where he continues to play up that intrigue and mystery and sweep Billy off of his feet with the mystery of it. Who is this interesting and confusing man? We'll go with one more here. And I need your insight because, again, I'm unfamiliar thus far with the doctor and the companion relationship. But the doctor and Martha, do you ship it?
I can't answer this until I hear your take based on this one teensy tiny little window.
Okay. Okay. Based on this teensy tiny little window, because we get to see them in 1969 together and then again in the future in the 1 year later. And I think, oh, and she pops into the DVD as well. And generally speaking, I do ship it because I like the same kind of little contentious energy between them that I perceived a bit between Kathy and Dear Ben, right? I think in the past in 1969, she just encourages Billy to just to keep up, right? To do your best in between the breaths. And then in the DVD, she pops on to point out how she's had to work in a shop to look after
Mm-hmm.
him and take care of him while they're stranded in 1969. And she's the breadwinner pulling him along. And then in the future, again, there's just this bickering, delightful energy. She's trying to pull him away. Come on, we've got this sort of important thing, and he probably has the whole world in balance on whatever they're going to go do with their bow and arrows. And yet, like, there's the doctor sort of affably taken by this conversation with this random woman. And there's Martha like, come on, hello. There's like a whole world. I can only imagine that is very prevalent in their dynamic typically. And so I suppose I ship it.
Yeah. Yeah. So this episode is about feasting on potential energy. And I personally love Martha. I love Freema Agyeman, the actress, perhaps even more. I don't think, for me, any other companion was more poorly served by the writing, because she is this strong, capable character. She is charming. She is beautiful. She can keep up with the doctor, and they don't give her enough of a chance for that to be the center of her character until it's too late. So we talked about earlier how you got the sense that you would not want Sally as the doctor's companion. And I think you accidentally stumbled into how they failed to serve Martha properly in this series. She never should have been the companion. I don't mean that the actress shouldn't have. I don't mean that the character Martha shouldn't have. I mean, she is not the type of person who needs to be following this, cocky genius around the universe. That's not how she rolls. And she was not served well enough. But I love Martha. She is 1 billion% the character I would most like to see return to the series in some capacity. And rewatching
Oh,
this, if she ever appeared alongside Carey Mulligan, whether it is a romantic or simply a working relationship, I would love to see those two just tackling any odds together. So yeah, some lost potential there. But enough about lost potential, Kris. Let's talk about real potential. Let's talk about the real world, because I think we did it, buddy. I think we did our second new to Who. I think we're going to be back for another segment at some point. Are you game for more Doctor Who?
dude, I'm totally game. I want to really earn the title of a Whovian. I'm a fan now, and I want to make good on that. So where do we go next?
All right. I keep thinking that I want to jump ahead and just get you to the start of New Who. But I've really been loving our timey-wimey approach. So my current plan is I want to give you one little taste of every New Who Doctor before you go back to Christopher Eccleston in season 1. I'm torn between which Doctor I want to go to next, but I like the timey-wiminess. So I'm curious. Um, is there a particular aspect of the Doctor or of Doctor Who lore that you are the most interested in getting a clearer window into? Because, Heaven Sent, we got this deep internal psychological dive into the Doctor, their trauma, their complexity. We spent very little time with the Doctor in this episode, but we saw the charm. We saw David Tennant ace the techno babble quiz. Is there anything here that you'd love for me to pick an episode that's going to give you a deeper window?
I think for now, I would like to go to an episode that contains some other important iconography. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
that's too general, but in that first episode, Heaven Sent, I was introduced to some of the bigger kind of driving themes of the Doctor's world and mythology, the Daleks, the ongoing time war, and all of that. And then in this episode, I get, I guess, a taste of the fun adventure of the week flavor that I think Doctor Who can bring,
Mm-hmm.
and the iconic drop of this wonderful concept of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey stuff. And so, if we're not going to get into a proper time flow sequentially, if we're not going to jump into sort of an ongoing story narrative, then I would like to go somewhere that feels similarly iconic for one reason or another. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got a few episodes in mind. I'll be chatting with you about that off pod. So be on the lookout for New to Who Part 3. Meanwhile, I'll plug it for about the 17th time on this episode. media.slash.lit@gmail.com. Email us to share your thoughts. Email us to correct things I've said about Doctor Who, even though I have really only experienced New Who. Is there a property that you'd love to hear us talk about as if it were great literature? Perhaps especially something silly or goofy that a lesser mind might see as something that's not art, but you know better. You know that it's full of value and purpose and meaning. Please feel free to let us know. Kris, anything you'd hypothetically love to hear in our email?
Yeah, I mean, I think that folks should feel free to answer any questions that we answered during the pod that they were like screaming out their own take on, right? So if you've got a hindsight is 2020 from this episode, I would love to hear it. If there's a ship that we missed or there's an angle on one of these ships, I would love to hear it. So please, by all means, participate in the discussion.
Absolutely. Kris, before we sign out for the night, where can people find you? And do you have any projects or things you want to share with us tonight?
Still cannot officially tease the short film that I would tease last episode. It will release in the festival circuit soon, and then it'll be a little more broadly available. So I'll plug it then. But folks, remain teased. In the meantime, you can find me at my Instagram as always. I am Kris_Ingersoll, and that is Kris like Kringle.
Absolutely. And I am your host, Randy Elaine. You can find me on Twitter at Mr_Elaine, ALLAIN. You can find links to Media Lit, my portfolio, Blue Sky. You can find all the other places that I am available online. Also, if you could visit the Pop Break podcast feed, you can catch me at the top of each month talking about the full discography of the Police with Justin and Kris Mancini on a little pod with a fantastic title called Every Pod You Cast. I'm also over on the Pop Break webpage, and you can go back and find all of my write-ups on Season 5 of Fargo if you're so inclined. All right. I think you've heard enough from us. It's time for us to hop into the TARDIS and take off to our next episode. Thank you for being with us, and have a fantastic night.